This morning was very interesting. We got some DNA results. The prosecution did something that I thought was smart, and he did it a couple of times. He asked about DNA and what might destroy it or remove it. And the witness said water can wash it away, bleach or UV light can destroy it, shampooing, wiping a surface can remove it, vacuuming can remove it, and time, because in the environment, the DNA will degrade over time depending on the environment. As we go through this, you need to know what the known samples are. If you hear about the swabbing of the toothbrush, that means Jennifer's. That's Jennifer's DNA. And the rest that were compared were Fotis, Michelle, Lauren, the nanny, Pavel, and the Dulos children. Remember the bag with the duct tape? They found that 4 people contributed to the DNA on that bag. 4. Those 4 people are...
The results are consistent with the DNA profile from item 883S7 being a mixture of 4 contributors, with at least 2 of them being male. Assuming 4 contributors, the DNA profile from 883S7 is at least 100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from the source of the DNA profile from the swabbing of the electric toothbrush and 3 unknown individuals than if it originated from 4 unknown individuals. In assuming 4 contributors, the DNA profile from 883S7 is at least 100 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fotis Dulos and 3 unknown individuals than if it originated from 4 unknown individuals. Assuming 4 contributors, the DNA profile from item 883S7 is at least 780,000 times more likely to occur if it originated from Michelle Troconis and 3 unknown individuals than if it originated from 4 unknown individuals.
And we don't know who else. And this is the swabbing of the bag itself. One of the knotted bags, DNA found on that bag, Jennifer. It was inconclusive for Fotis, which means they didn't have enough to be able to say it was or was not. But Michelle was eliminated, and it was inconclusive for the kids. They looked at the hair. Remember, they found a hair in the knot of the bag. They couldn't get nuclear DNA from it, so they did do mitochondrial DNA. They can't exclude Jennifer, but Michelle is excluded as the source of that hair. Now the sticky side of the duct tape. There were 2 contributors on that, and I expected to hear Fotis and perhaps Jennifer. But what she said was Jennifer was one source. Michelle and Fotis were eliminated. And they didn't get into who the other DNA was on that tape. Obviously, they didn't match it with any of the known profiles they had. The striped shirt that was in the same bag as the bra, and that was in one of those knotted bags, Jennifer's DNA, which we expected. But Michelle and Fotis were eliminated. The bra. There were 2 contributors of DNA on that bra. One was, as we expected, Jennifer. But Michelle and Fotis and Pavel were eliminated as sources of DNA on that bra. So who's the other contributor? Inside the knot of the bag, they found Jennifer's DNA and 1 other person's. Michelle was eliminated and Fotis was eliminated. Remember the panty liner they found in one of the bags? Michelle was eliminated, and it was inconclusive for Fotis and Jennifer. The clear bag that looked like a poncho, they found Jennifer's DNA on it. Both Fotis and Michelle were eliminated as sources of DNA on that bag. Remember they found a hair with these ponchos, right? They couldn't get nuclear DNA. They did mitochondrial DNA testing on it. All known contributors were eliminated. The clear plastic bag, and I think they're talking about a poncho because they put a picture up and there was the hood on it. Jennifer's DNA was on it in multiple places. On the hood of it was Jennifer's DNA. There was a hard whitish material on it with staining. That was Jennifer's DNA there as well. Then they went to the sponges. there were 2 sponges in 2 different places within the garbage. Both sponges look alike. They were both those green and yellow things. One sponge had no blood on it, and the other sponge had a red-brown stain on it, which turned out to be blood. And it also had that debris, what was initially called plant-like material. So it had that debris on it. So we're talking 2 different sponges. So the sponge I'm talking about now is the dirty one, the one with the blood on it, the one with the debris on the scrubby side, okay? The blood on there, well, the brown stains, came back as Jennifer's DNA. And they tested several spots on that sponge. On one spot, they found Jennifer's DNA, but Fotis, Michelle, and Pavel were all eliminated. On another spot, they found Jennifer's DNA and one unknown DNA. They were able to eliminate Fotis, but for Michelle, the results were inconclusive, which again says they didn't have enough to say it was, and they don't have enough to say it isn't. The gardening glove. They checked the interior of that glove. Inconclusive for Fotis, inconclusive for Michelle, inconclusive for the nanny, and Pavel was eliminated. The exterior of the garden glove. Fotis and Michelle were eliminated, inconclusive for Jennifer and the kids. The interior palm, Jennifer was eliminated. There was a 27,000 times more likely to be Fotis than an unknown. Michelle was eliminated. Pavel was eliminated. The interior back of that glove, there were 2 contributors. It was inconclusive for Fotis. Michelle was eliminated, and Lauren and Pavel are eliminated. The husky gloves, the left interior palm, they found Jennifer's DNA. They found Jennifer's DNA on the exterior. The right glove interior, they found Jennifer's DNA. On the exterior of that glove, they found 2 contributors of DNA. Michelle was eliminated. Fotis was eliminated. Lauren was eliminated. And Pavel was eliminated. Jennifer was one of those contributors. And there was no conclusive anything about who the other contributor was. If there's somebody else out there involved in all this, I hope that whoever it is caught and held accountable. I want to see whatever the truth is come out for the sake of everybody, but especially for the sake of Jennifer's family. On the zip ties, they found one profile. That was Jennifer's. Remember the towel with all the stains on it? There were 2 contributors on that towel. One was Jennifer's, and her DNA was found in multiple spots on the towel. Fotis and Michelle were eliminated. Lauren and Pavel were eliminated. On one of the stains on the towel, there was 1 contributor of DNA, but it was not Jennifer. It was not Fotis, not Michelle, not Lauren, not Pavel, and not the kids. There was a hair on that towel. They got a partial mitochondrial profile, and the most that they could say is that Fotis could not be excluded. But everybody else out of the known profiles were definitely excluded. On the mop handle, there was 1 contributor. All those reddish brown stains that came back KM positive for blood, well, the DNA was all Jennifer's. There were 4 pieces of a plastic garbage bag. Those bags that had tape on it. On the non-adhesive side of that black tape, they found there was 1 contributor in 1 sample, and it was Jennifer's DNA. A second swab, again of the non-adhesive portion of the tape, there were 2 contributors. One was Jennifer. Fotis was eliminated, and it was inconclusive for Michelle. But here's the thing. So inconclusive means we can't say it was, we can't say it wasn't. It was inconclusive also for the children. Here's an interesting little thing that came up. When the lab first tested this, the result for Michelle was inconclusive. In 2020, the lab got a new kit. And so now that's what they use. So they redid this sample where it was inconclusive for Michelle. And with the new kit, Michelle was eliminated. And I suspect that the prosecution is going to make much of the fact that there was a time when it was inconclusive. But it still wasn't, at no point was it a matter of that, yes, it's conclusively her DNA. The results for the children also came back as inconclusive. Another stain on the exterior of the non-damaged bag came back to Jennifer. A stain on the interior came back to 2 contributors. One was Jennifer. Fotis was eliminated. Michelle was eliminated. Lauren and Pavel were eliminated. Who's the second contributor? This is inside the non-damaged bag. So you can't even argue that it was, because it was in the city garbage. This bag was intact on the exterior of the non-damaged bag. So now this could be, anybody, right? There were 4 contributors. One was Jennifer. Fotis was eliminated. Michelle came back inconclusive. The children and Pavel and Lauren were eliminated. The exterior of the damaged bag, they didn't find any DNA. Now, the other sponge. Remember the clean one that was found inside a bag? They didn't find DNA on the swabbing, but there was a hair that was caught in the green scrubby part because they did mitochondrial DNA. The language is they can't be included or can't be excluded. And what that hair came back as was Pavel cannot be excluded. Michelle was excluded. Fotis was excluded. On the unused garbage bag, there was a stain. It came back as Jennifer's DNA. And there were several more stains on the exterior that came back as Jennifer's DNA. The opening exterior part of the bag came back with Jennifer's DNA. The interior of the bag came back as Jennifer's DNA. Remember that scraper initially described as a razor blade, but is now being described as a scraper? They tested the blade and holder, and there were 2 DNA contributors to that. One was Jennifer. Fotis and Michelle were both eliminated as contributors. In fact, all of the known DNA was eliminated. So who was the other contributor? And you're going to see this throughout the whole thing. The Tacoma. They took part of the upholstery on a seat back. It came back with Jennifer's DNA on it. On the plate screws and the plates, they didn't find anything. On the passenger side door, there were several samples. They didn't find anything. From the door panel of the Tacoma, there were 3 contributors, not Jennifer, not Michelle, not Fotis, and not Pavel. And I actually would have expected that Pavel's DNA would be there, but the car had been detailed. It was inconclusive for one of the kids of Jennifer Dulos. And they went through a whole bunch of samples where they didn't get anything. Remember the Tacoma passenger side? They ripped out the carpeting. In one section, they found no DNA, but in another section, they found 3 contributors of DNA. It was not Jennifer. Fotis and Michelle were eliminated. They did find Pavel's DNA, but that's expected. It's his truck. We don't know who the other 2 contributors are. Could have been the guys who detailed the car. Fotis is suburban. In the cargo area, remember that there was a little area that lit up and it came back KM positive, so they swabbed it. They found that there was DNA there. There were 3 contributors, not Jennifer. One was Fotis, not Michelle. Inconclusive for the kids, and not Lauren or Pavel. But really, that's what you would expect. On cross-examination, the defense focused on the exterior of this black garbage bag. And he talked about the quantities of DNA and pointed out they prefer to have at least a half a nanogram of material in order to get a full DNA profile. Through his cross-examination, I mean, he's going through all their worksheets in detail and everything else. What he ended up bringing out was the fact that this profile was only a partial profile anyway, so they didn't have enough to get a full profile. And then he was able to point out, and this was interesting, he was able to point out, because there were 4 in that 0.42 of 1 nanogram, there were 4 sources of DNA. So 4 sources of DNA in this teeny tiny sample. Less than half a nanogram. There's a way they can figure out approximately what percent of that sample belongs to different people. So out of the 4 contributors, one person contributed 50%, one 42%, one 5%, and one 3%. And the contributor that was the 50%, now remember, it's 50% of less than half a nanogram. I mean, this is tiny, right? And the one that came back for Michelle was 5% of this sample. And the defense sort of did the math with the witness. And the witness agreed that the sample actually amounts to about 3 cells. 3 human cells. That's it. You walk around, I mean, you're dropping more than that. They call it touch DNA, but it doesn't always mean you have to touch the thing. Now, we're talking about a garbage bag. If she did touch it, if they found her fingerprints on it, she did say she brought cleaning supplies. And if the garbage bags came from the Fotis Dulos household, it would be expected to find Michelle's fingerprints or Michelle's DNA on the exterior of any of these items. So the defense, I think it was good that the defense points out, this is 3 cells. After lunch, the prosecution argued that the defense's line of pointing out the fact that this DNA sample was so tiny, well, he shouldn't be allowed to do that. And the defense wants to put the quantities in plain language for the jury, to take these nanograms and picograms and change it, first of all, from metric to imperial, and to show how big or small these amounts are. I get where he's going. I think, the point he says it's only a couple of cells made the point, but okay. So instead of going through all that with the witness, he wanted to submit a conversion chart. Well, the prosecution objected to that as well. So what ended up happening is the judge ended up saying, okay, well, you have to, during your cross-examination, bring that up with the witness and get the witness to explain these conversions. So this poor witness had to sit there doing the math and explain those amounts. And I think that the number that really had an impact was the sample size was 21 trillionths of a gram. Really, I think it's better to just say it was a couple of cells, a couple of human cells. I mean, that would be really easy. And I point out that the defense is not what he's not arguing. He's not saying that her DNA wasn't on the bag. He's not saying that the science is wrong. He's not attacking any of that. That's not the issue. The issue is the fact that it's such a small amount, that she was not a major contributor, and that it would have been really easy for a couple of her cells to get there, considering she lives with Fotis, that the garbage bags probably came from Fotis's house. She was asked to bring over cleaning supplies, this sort of thing. So there would be plenty of opportunity for her skin cells, or actually, they don't even know if it's skin cells, any of her cells, for 2 or 3 cells to get on that. The defense during cross moved on to the cutting of the seat fabric. Where he went with it was he compared the documents in the lab that describe the cutting and describe what they saw. And the evidence sticker that was put on the evidence envelope that was submitted by police said that the fabric from the seat had a blood-like stain on it. But the lab's language is a faint brownish stain. Then the defense was like, blah, 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 whether DNA, you don't know whether DNA came from skin or saliva or blood or blah, blah, blah. And the answer is no, DNA is DNA. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter in some sense because Jennifer's DNA should not have been in that Tacoma at all in any amount. If the nanny's DNA is found on a sponge or a glove or the kid's DNA is found in Fotis' Suburban, you expect that. If Michelle or Michelle's daughter or her mother's DNA was found on any item that came from the Fotis Dulos household, then that's to be expected. But Fotis' DNA should never have been in Jennifer's kitchen, and Jennifer's DNA should not be in that Tacoma. So that would be a problem for Fotis if he was on trial here. I mean, look, at this point, I know it's not Fotis' trial, but they did have to prove that he killed Jennifer. There is no doubt in my mind that Fotis did this. No question. The questions are around who else was involved. All the evidence isn't in. I mean, we have to wait before we decide one way or another. Well, actually, technically, she's innocent until that presumption of innocence is overwhelmed by evidence. That's actually how the decision should go. Anyway, I think there are more people involved here. Fotis didn't do this by himself. Then the defense goes back to the garbage bag with the 4 contributors of DNA. That's this area on the top of the bag where a couple of Michelle's cells, and really we're talking 2 or 3 cells, human cells, that's it, were found on the top edge of this bag. Well, there are 4 contributors on it, and that's what the defense goes back to. And he says, if somebody was pulling out bags from a roll of bags, you know, the kind in the box that are on the roll, and you put your finger in there to hold down the next bag that's coming out to rip off the top one, if your DNA could get on that next bag that's in that box. And the prosecution jumps up and he's objecting. Well, the prosecution had asked hypotheticals of the witness earlier, but now, no, the defense can't do that. So they argue about that. And the judge is saying, well, yeah, he can ask this question. And the prosecution argued. It's like they just reversed roles. Remember in the beginning of the trial, the defense was, objection. Well, now it's the prosecution. So the witness agrees. Yeah, pulling the bag from the roll could leave DNA. And the defense asks, well, what if, if you're cleaning a house, you pick up a bag and move it from one room to another? And the prosecution objected again. And keeps objecting. It was bad enough that the defense had to ask the court reporter to replay his question, because when the judge said, yes, the question is allowed, well, by that time, the lawyer had forgotten what the heck it was he'd asked. He'd lost his momentum, right? Those kind of shenanigans were going on. Then he asked about transfer DNA. When he asked about the transfer DNA, it's going to help him and it's going to hurt him, the defense, actually, and the prosecution. It's going to hurt both of them. The prosecution wanted to object to this, but it was overruled. So I forgot something. One of the questions that the defense asked the witness was, well, you've got these contributors. Did you compare with anyone else? They were so focused on this certain group of people to test that when something came back when there's an extra contributor and they don't know who it is. So there's somebody else's DNA there. They don't know whose it is. They didn't go find out. The defense is on about transfer DNA. He says if Michelle touched Fotis's hand and then Fotis touched the garbage bag, could her DNA get on that bag in that manner? And the witness says, yes, it could. So the prosecution is now, he's objecting like crazy. And the judge says, that's enough. Look, the question is a valid question and it is relevant because Michelle was in the Raptor with Fotis while Fotis is dropping off this garbage everywhere. If Michelle had touched Fotis at any point, or her, right? He could have got her DNA on him and transferred it to the bag. It's not like the cake box, okay? It's not like he got her DNA on her and then, 2 hours later transferred it. It was quick. The witness agreed that's a possibility. And then the witness also added some things in here. I love scientists. I love witnesses who they just want to tell the truth. Sometimes the truth helps you and hurts you at the same time. Sometimes it doesn't fit into the narrative you'd like. Sometimes it's inconvenient, but that's the way it is. She went on to say, well, there are a number of factors though that affect what is called touch DNA. So how long, how much of the material was transferred, and then each time it's transferred, it's less and less. So that's going to kill the defense's cake box theory. It hurts the prosecution for this portion. It can explain why Michelle's DNA was found on that one bag. Then he got into something that I've been asking the entire day today, which is there are contributors of DNA to a number of items, and they never ever said who that contributor was. There were 2 contributors on the bloody shirt that belonged to Jennifer. So one was Jennifer herself, and there was a second contributor, but they never figured out who that second contributor was. Michelle was eliminated. Fotis was eliminated. Pavel was eliminated. They never figured out who it was. In fact, there were a number of items where there's an extra contributor and they didn't determine who that was. That's not the fault of the lab. The defense asked, did you ever compare this other DNA, this other contributor, to a known sample of an individual by the name of Kent Mawhinney? She says no. Then the prosecution was trying to do damage control, so he's on redirect. He's actually then trying to lead and rephrase testimony, and so, the defense objects, and then he's trying to get the witness to say basically, well, Michelle must have touched the bag. But that wouldn't be the truth, because those couple of cells could have got on that bag in any number of ways. The prosecution's trying to do this damage control, but the witness does not say what he wants. She reasserts she cannot determine how or when the DNA got there. Then the prosecution tried to give hypotheticals that were worse than what the defense was doing. The same kind of thing that the prosecution was just objecting to 10 minutes before. The prosecution says to the witness, so Pavel was eliminated from all these samples except for one? The witness, so she's sitting there, she has to go through all her notes in order to be able to have any chance of coming up with an answer that is going to be somewhat accurate. And so what she says is, well, except for one where he was ruled in, it was conclusive, it was him. The other ones, he was either eliminated or it was inconclusive. This makes me laugh because that's exactly the situation with Michelle. Michelle was eliminated, or there were a couple of them they were inconclusive, and there was this one finding on the outside of a bag that came from her house. So somehow in the prosecution's mind, being eliminated or having it be inconclusive for all except one makes Pavel okay, but makes Michelle guilty? Is this how this works? I am still bothered by this Tacoma and Michelle's mention of the Tacoma. I feel like there's some things that so far in the interviews that she has not been forthcoming about. And I don't know if that's intentional or not, but it's just, there are a couple of things that are gnawing at me. So we'll see how this goes. And this is probably hilarious for you guys because many of you have been following this from the beginning and I knew nothing of it. The only thing I know is what I'm seeing at trial. But all the twists and turns I find interesting. And that was it. They ended it pretty abruptly, actually. So that's all I've got for you today. Trust your gut. I'll see you in the comments.